I'm Emily, 42. I believed I had finally reached my pinnacle after years of dedication finalizing the purchase of my ideal $2.8 million villa along the Atlantic Ocean front in the Hamptons, craving only tranquility and solitude, but my sister Sophia's call disrupted it all, declaring she and 14 others were heading my way for a 3-week stay, insisting I arrange accommodations right away. If you were 42 like me, would you let someone invade the space you've sacrificed so much to earn? I thought I had truly arrived. After all those years of putting everything on the line, I put pen to paper on the deed for the place I'd always pictured in my mind, a stunning villa right on the edge of the Atlantic, where the only soundtrack was the steady roll of waves. I needed that quiet, that calm, that room to just exist without demands. But then the phone buzzed, and the familiar voice on the line tore through my peace like a storm. It was Sophia, my sister. She skipped any hello or how are you. We're heading over to your place. It'll be 15 of us total. Get the beds ready along with towels, slippers, and plenty of food. We're planning on 3 weeks. We'll arrive in 40 minutes, so get moving. I held the phone stunned, staring at it as if it had betrayed me. 15 strangers turning my haven into their playground for nearly a month. My retreat, the prize I'd earned through endless effort, suddenly felt like it was slipping away. My pulse quickened, but instead of spiraling, a quiet resolve settled over me. I even felt a small smile form. I had something in mind. After Sophia clicked off, I stood there in the middle of my partly settled living room, the phone still warm against my ear, even though the call had ended. Outside the wide windows, the Atlantic stretched out forever, waves crashing in a soothing pattern, but all I could focus on was her abrupt orders echoing in my head. Get beds, towels, slippers, food ready. 15 of us, 3 weeks. My fingers trembled as I placed the phone down on the smooth quartz countertop. For so long, I'd held onto this vision, the vast horizon, the fresh, salty breeze flowing through the open panes, the distant calls of seagulls soaring above the dunes. As an engineer, I'd pulled double shifts, passed on trips with friends, pinched every penny while watching others indulge, all to make this real one day. This wasn't just a building to me, it was my refuge. And now, Sophia, my own flesh and blood, had decided it belonged to her as well. Her voice had carried that same edge it always did, not an ask, not even a hint of discussion, but a flat-out expectation from someone who'd grown used to getting her way. Back in our younger days, Sophia was the one who called the shots, and I was the fixer, tidying up whatever chaos she left behind. When she eyed my new outfits, she'd borrow them and forget to give them back. In her 20s, when rent came due and she fell short, I'd cut the check, telling myself it was temporary. Then there was her son's school fees. I tapped into my nest egg again, repeating that family mattered most. But this claiming my home like it was hers, the absurdity hit me, and I let out a quiet laugh, though my throat tightened. I'd only been here a week. Boxes still lined the halls unpacked. Paintings rested against the walls, waiting for their spots. My bed wasn't even put together yet. I was making do with a mattress right on the floor. And Sophia figured she and her crowd, 14 people I didn't know, could just show up and turn it into their vacation spot for 3 weeks. I shut my eyes, replaying her words. We'll be there in 40 minutes, so get moving. No pause to check if I was free, if it was okay, if I minded at all. She just assumed that since I'd built something solid, it was hers to share. In the past, I might have folded. The version of me who dodged arguments, who prized harmony over honesty, would have rushed around fluffing pillows, filling the fridge, anything to keep her content. But standing in that villa, my villa, with the ocean air cooling my heated face, a change stirred inside. I wasn't the pushover sister from our teen years anymore. I wasn't the woman who'd quietly paid her bills or forced smiles through her jabs at gatherings. This was my boundary, firm and clear. My gaze fell on a delicate crystal wine glass I'd unpacked that morning. The light caught it just right, sending little prisms dancing across the quartz surface. So fragile, yet strong in its own way, if handled carefully. I lifted it gently and murmured to myself, not this time. Things are changing, because Sophia believed she could just storm into my villa. She thought she could override my life like she always had, but she didn't know what I had ready for her. The ocean's rhythm faded as memories pulled me back to times I'd tried to forget. Sophia had always been the type to grab what she wanted without a second thought. And if you pushed back, she'd layer on the guilt until you caved anyway. In 2008 inches, a cramped apartment fresh out of college, I was 25 and scraping by with an entry-level engineering job. The walls were thin, the furniture secondhand, but I had big plans, plans that felt a million miles away when Sophia's calls started coming. Back then, I was still figuring out how to balance my checkbook while working late nights at the office. The first time Sophia reached out for help, I was barely keeping my head above water. She needed money for rent, just a few $100s, she said, her voice soft and almost childlike over the phone. "I'll pay you back as soon as my next check clears, Emmy," she promised, sweet as honey. I wired the money, of course. I told myself it was what sisters do. She never paid me back. That was just the beginning. Over the next few years, the calls kept coming, each one a little bolder. Her credit cards were maxed out after a spree on designer shoes. She needed a bailout. Her car broke down, leaving her stranded. She needed another check. Then her son needed new clothes for school, and who else could she turn to? Each time I dipped into my savings, convincing myself it was temporary, that family came first. My bank account dwindled while I worked overtime, skipped dinners out, and passed on trips with friends to keep my dream of a home alive. Sophia, though, lived differently. She'd show up to family dinners with new handbags dangling from her arm, talking about weekend getaways with friends I'd never met. Her life seemed to sparkle while mine was all spreadsheets and late-night calculations. I'd sit across from her, forcing a smile as she complained about her latest emergency, knowing I'd be the one to fix it. She'd lean in, her hands wrapping around mine over coffee, her eyes wide with that practiced innocence. "You're the reliable one, Emmy," she'd say. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Reliable. That word stuck to me like a label I couldn't peel off. I wanted to believe it was love, that helping her was what our parents had taught us. Work hard, be kind, stick together. Their lessons echoed in my head, lessons from a childhood home where we'd both been raised to value effort and respect. But every time I wrote another check, a quiet resentment started to build like a slow leak I couldn't quite plug. I'd watch my savings shrink, my dream of a place by the ocean slipping further out of reach, and wonder why I kept saying yes. The pattern was clear by my late 20s. Sophia never asked if I could afford it, never paused to think what I was giving up. If I hesitated, she'd pivot to guilt. "It's just this once," she'd say, her voice dipping into that pleading tone, but it was never just once. Each request was a brick added to the load on my shoulders, and I carried them all because I didn't know how to say no without feeling like I was betraying family. I'd lie awake at night in that tiny apartment, the hum of the city outside my window, calculating how many extra shifts I'd need to rebuild what I'd given her. My friends were booking flights for vacations. I was booking overtime. They were buying nice things. I was buying Sophia's excuses. And yet I kept telling myself it was worth it. Family was worth it. But deep down, a small voice started whispering that maybe this wasn't about family at all. Maybe it was about Sophia knowing I'd always cave. Those years stretched on each one heavier than the last. I was learning to be frugal, to watch every dollar like it was my lifeline. Meanwhile, Sophia's life seemed to get louder, flashier, like she was living in a different world. I'd see her at gatherings laughing too loudly, tossing her hair while I sat quietly wondering when she'd call next, and she always did. The resentment grew, but I swallowed it, tucking it away for the sake of peace. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. But those early struggles were planting something else too. A seed of determination buried under all that weight. I was working towards something bigger, something mine. The dream of a home by the Atlantic where I could breathe without someone else's demands pressing in. And every time I said yes to Sophia, that dream felt a little further away, but also a little more worth fighting for. In the mid-2010 seconds at my engineer's desk, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups, I was in my 30s, saving every penny for my dream home. The office hum and late-night overtime had become my rhythm, but Sophia's shadow still loomed large, pulling me back into her orbit with every new demand. By then, I'd been at my job for years, climbing slowly but steadily. My life was a careful balance of work and sacrifice extra shifts instead of weekends out budgeting to the dime while others splurged. I had a vision, a home by the Atlantic where the waves would wash away the noise of the world. But Sophia had other plans for my money. Her daughter, my niece, was heading to college, and tuition deadlines loomed. Sophia had spent freely designer handbags, spa weekends, trips with her crowd, leaving nothing for the bills. "Emmy, you've always been the steady one," she said over coffee, her voice soft but calculated. "You've got the savings. Can't you help just this once, just this once?" I'd heard that line too many times, but I couldn't let my niece pay for her mother's recklessness. So I wrote the check, watching another chunk of my dream slip away. I told myself it was for family, that it was the right thing. but the weight on my chest grew heavier like a stone I couldn't shift. Sophia didn't even say thank you, just moved on to her next big plan. That plan was her wedding. She wanted it grand, the kind of event people would talk about for years. Flowers flown in from halfway across the globe, a ballroom dripping in gold and crystal chandeliers, a gown that cost more than my car. Over lunch, she leaned, close her hands, gripping mine with that theatrical intensity. "This is my dream, Emmy," she whispered. "You're the only one I can count on." I signed the check again, my pen heavy, my heart heavier. I told myself it was love, that family was worth the cost. But a voice inside whispered something else. Sophia didn't value me. She valued what I could give her. Looking back, I could see the pattern clearly. It wasn't about sisterhood or shared memories of our childhood, where our parents taught us to work hard, be kind, respect what others earned. Sophia had forgotten those lessons. I'd walk past the framed photo of our parents on my mantelpiece, their smiles frozen in time from our old porch, and feel a pang in my chest. They'd raised us to build our own paths, but Sophia saw my path as hers to walk on. Every dollar I gave her was a brick added to the wall between us, and I'd been the one stacking them, too afraid to say no. By my mid-30s, I was saving like a hawk every overtime hour, a step closer to my oceanfront villa. But Sophia's calls kept coming, each one chipping away at my resolve. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. "You've got money," she'd say, as if my sacrifices were nothing, as if my dreams were less real than hers. The resentment I'd buried in my 20s started to surface, sharp and undeniable. I wasn't just helping family anymore, I was enabling her entitlement. I'd touch that framed photo, sometimes whispering to it as if my parents could hear. "You'd be ashamed of her," I'd say softly, and maybe proud of me for trying. But trying wasn't enough anymore. The villa wasn't just a house. It was my reward for every sleepless night, every missed holiday, every choice to put my future first. Yet in Sophia's mind, my sacrifices were just a free pass for her and her friends to live large. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, not just at her, but at myself for letting it go on so long. That anger was still simmering when years later the call came. I'd finally done it, bought my villa in the Hamptons, my sanctuary by the Atlantic. I was still unpacking, still settling into the life I'd earned. But Sophia's voice on the phone demanding beds and towels for her crew brought it all rushing back. 40 minutes, she said. 40 minutes until my dream was invaded. The rumble of engines on the coastal drive snapped me out of my thoughts, my stomach twisting as I braced for what was coming. In 2025, at the foyer of my villa in the Hamptons, I was 42 and watching a convoy pull up the coastal drive, my stomach knotting as tires crunched the gravel. Those 40 minutes had flown by like a blur. I hadn't even finished sorting through a box of kitchen items when the low growl of engines echoed up from the road. I moved to the window, peering out, and felt my insides drop. 5 vehicles in a line, Sophia's sleek black SUV leading, like a commander, trailed by sedans, crammed with faces, and a pickup loaded with coolers and beach chairs. Dust kicked up as they rolled in, settling over the stones like an unwelcome fog. Doors flew open in quick bursts. Laughter spilled out sharp and carefree. Kids let out excited squeals. Someone called, "This spot is unreal," and there she was, Sophia stepping from the SUV, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, her hair catching the breeze as if she were starring in her own ad. "Emmy," she shouted, arms wide like we were reuniting after years apart. "What a paradise. You're so fortunate." I didn't budge. The front door stood solid between us, mahogany with etched glass panels. For a split second, I considered keeping it shut, pretending I wasn't there, but the knocks came hard and fast before I could think. "Come on, sis, let us in. We drove 4 hours for this." I cracked the door just enough to see her grin. "Sophia," I said, "I'm not set up for visitors." She didn't miss a beat, pushing it wider and sweeping past me into the foyer, her perfume trailing like a claim. Behind her, the group poured in strangers to me, hauling bags, boxes of snacks and drinks, chattering like they owned the place. "Look at that pool," one yelled from down the hall. "This kitchen's huge," another echoed. A woman I didn't know kicked off her sandals, leaving wet prints across the travertine floor from some earlier stop. "Hold on," I said, my voice shaking more from rising anger than anything else. "You can't just come in like this." But they didn't listen or didn't care. Sophia spun in the center of the foyer, arms out. Perfect, right? Just like I described. My sister knows how to do it right. My sister. She said it like a badge that gave her full access to everything I'd built. I tracked her as she eyed the staircase. Master bedroom's up there? Yeah, I'll claim that one. The view's prime. My heart skipped. No, I cut in stepping in front of her. That's my space. Her sunglasses slipped down, her eyes cool and sharp. Emmy, don't hoard it. We're family, and you've got rooms to spare. Voices rose behind her, people shifting my things around like it was nothing. A guy cracked open a cooler, the hiss of a beer can cutting through my spotless living room. In minutes, my refuge, the place I dreamed of, was theirs, and Sophia stood at the heart of it, smiling like she'd claimed victory. I froze at the staircase base as Sophia climbed like she was taking her rightful seat. Her heels tapped the wood, each step a tick toward confrontation. Sophia, I called, trailing her. That room's private. It's mine. She glanced back with a sharp laugh. Oh, Emmy, lighten up. Hosts always give the best spot to guests. Guests. You're not guests, I snapped. You showed up uninvited with 14 people I don't know. She ignored me, flinging the double doors to my master bedroom wide. Sunlight flooded in, highlighting the balcony over the Atlantic. My haven. 2 women followed her in wheels of their suitcases, scraping the hardwood. This is ideal, one chirped. The lighting's perfect for photos. No, I said, positioning myself in the doorway. No one stays here. Sophia turned slowly, sunglasses off now, her gaze calculating. Emmy, drop the drama. You've got 4 other rooms. This one fits me best, plus the view from my morning yoga clips. My audience will eat it up. The easy entitlement in her words twisted my gut. I moved forward, blocking the path to the balcony. Leave. Her friends swapped smirks like this was entertainment. Sophia's lips curved. Really, Emmy, after all I've done for you, that almost made me chuckle. All she'd done. For years, I'd been the rescuer, pulling her from debts, covering her slips. But in her twisted view, I was the ungrateful one. You don't understand, I said, volume climbing. This isn't a hotel. It's mine. I earned it, and you can't just take over. The room went quiet, save for the distant waves. Sophia's smirk tightened. You think this house makes you superior? Money doesn't change who runs things here. I'm your sister family first. Not like this, I fired back, hand steadying. Not by pushing in. Her eyes narrowed, and in that look I saw it, she hadn't come to visit. She'd come to take, like always. Only now it was my everything on the line. Behind me, her friends had opened my closet, handling my clothes, chatting about borrowing pieces. My pulse thundered. Out, I shouted louder than I'd ever raised my voice at her. All of you out. Sophia paused, a hint of doubt flickering before she hit it with a chill smile. Big mistake, sis, she murmured. You'll regret this. And then, as if to seal it, she heaved her suitcase onto my bed. For a beat, I just stared at the bag sprawled across my covers, the zipper catching the light. Something inside me snapped, years of holding back, of yielding for harmony, of letting Sophia cross every line. It all surged up. Get that off my bed, I said, my tone low and edge vibrating with the fury I'd kept locked away. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. Then her mouth twisted into a smirk. Relax, Emmy. Learn to share. Family helps family remember what Mom said. Her words cut deep, twisting our parents' memory into her tool. No, I said the word, ringing clear. The room hushed. Her friends stopped pawing through my things, eyeing me like I'd finally snapped the script. Sophia tilted her head, sweetness laced with venom. Don't be selfish. We all agree, right? Murmurs followed from voices I didn't know. She's got space. Why fuss over one room? Chill, Emmy. Don't kill the mood. A man popped a beer, right there, foam dripping onto the hardwood. He lifted it toward Sophia, to family. My jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Family doesn't barge in, I snapped, facing them. Family doesn't demand, and family doesn't treat a home like a free stay. Sophia's smirk wavered for a second, her poise cracking. You're overreacting, she muttered, but then she closed in, voice low for my ears only. What'll you do, Emmy? Kick us out. You don't have it in you. Her taunt was the spark on dry tinder, igniting the rage I'd held for decades. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the power of finally finding my stand. Yes, I said loud for all. That's exactly what I'm doing. Gasps rippled. Sophia's eyes widened, then slit. You wouldn't. I squared up, heart pounding. Watch me. For the first time, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't the silent sister mopping up messes. I was the owner, the woman who'd built this through grit. This was my stand. In 2,025 inches, the study of my villa in the Hamptons, I was 42 and turning the lock on the heavy mahogany door as chaos swirled outside. The room seemed to close in around me, 15 voices rising in the halls, laughter bouncing off the walls like I didn't exist. My heart hammered in my ears. I'd tried words. I'd tried holding my ground, but Sophia wasn't hearing it. She never had. I drew a slow breath, willing my hands to stop trembling. Then I turned and walked from the master bedroom. Behind me, scoffs and mocking chuckles followed. Sophia's voice cut through, laced with disdain. She's bluffing. She won't follow through. But she was mistaken. I strode down the hall to my study and shut the door with a firm click. The lock engaged under my fingers. For the first time since they'd arrived, a sliver of control returned. I leaned against the desk, breathing deeply, my eyes on the phone in my palm. Could I really do this? Call the authorities on my own sister, on what she called family, a shatter of glass from the living room, sealed at the clink of broken shards, followed by more laughs rolling through the house. My sanctuary was being dismantled. I tapped the screen, 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice was steady, professional. Mine wavered but held a new strength. There are people in my home who won't leave, about 15 of them. They push their way in. I need assistance. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Not yet, I murmured, glancing at the door as shapes moved under the gap. But they ignore me when I tell them to go. I've asked repeatedly. Can you verify this is your property? Yes, I said firmly. I bought it last month. I have the deed right here. My name is Emily Collins. Officers are on their way. Stay secured until they arrive. ETA is 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I could manage that. A firm knock rattled the study door. Emmy. Sophia's tone was falsely warm. Don't do this. We're family. Let's discuss it properly. Another voice, a man's mocking and loud. She's phoning the cops, huh? Such a scene. My stomach churned, but I stayed quiet. Then Sophia's warmth cracked her words, sharp as shards. If you go through with this, Emmy, you'll wish you hadn't. You'll lose me. You'll lose everyone. You'll be all alone in this empty house. Her jab hit old scars, the fear of isolation that had shadowed me for years. But instead of crumbling, it solidified me. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, our parents beaming a symbol of the principles Sophia had discarded. I clutched the phone tighter and whispered to myself, better alone than used. Outside, the murmurs turned frantic. They sensed the police were coming. I heard Sophia snapping at her group, her control slipping into urgency. No worry, she won't. She never does. But this time, she was wrong. The minutes stretched like hours. My gaze flicked to the clock on the desk, each tick dragging slower than the last. Beyond the door, whispers escalated to disputes. Some of Sophia's friends suggested leaving. Others wanted to wait it out. Sophia's voice dominated, commanding, and insistent. She's just acting up. Give her time, she'll unlock and say sorry. Then the sound I'd waited for, sirens, distant at first, then growing, slicing through the Atlantic breeze like a signal. My heart jumped a mix of relief and apprehension because I knew the real face-off was just beginning. In 2,025 inches, the hallway of my villa in the Hamptons, I was 42, and hearing the sirens draw nearer their wail, piercing the air like a promise. The minutes had dragged on each one thick with tension. My eyes kept darting to the clock on the desk, willing the hands to move faster. Outside the study door, the whispers had shifted into heated exchanges. Some of Sophia's friends were pushing to pack up and go. Others held firm, betting I'd cave. Sophia's voice rose above the rest, sharp and controlling. She won't do it. She's dramatic. Wait her out. She'll come out apologizing soon. Then it came the sirens, faint at first, like a distant hum, then swelling, cutting through the ocean, breeze with urgency. My heart leaped into my throat, a rush of relief mixed with a touch of dread, knowing the standoff wasn't over yet. The house burst into disarray. Footsteps hurried across the travertine floors, voices overlapping in alarm. I turned the lock on the study door and stepped into the hallway, phone still gripped like a lifeline. Sophia was hissing directions to her group, her poise cracking. Don't panic, she won't follow through. She never does. But her tone betrayed, her edged with uncertainty. The group scrambled, stuffing clothes into bags, debating whether to bolt or stay. I moved down the hall, the deed folder in hand, my fingers no longer shaking. The sirens grew louder, a blade through the salty air, wafting from the open windows. The chaos intensified, coolers snapped shut, beach chairs clattered as they were gathered, muddy streaks marred the travertine half-empty beer cans, littered the surfaces marks of their brief reign. I stood at the hallway's end overlooking the foyer, feeling a strange steadiness settle in. For the first time that day, I felt taller, stronger, like the weight I'd carried for years was finally lifting. Sophia caught sight of me, her eyes narrowing. See, she's coming around. But I didn't speak, didn't back down. The sirens were close now, unmistakable, echoing off the dunes outside. The group's arguments peaked. Some cursed under their breath, others shot me glares as if I were the intruder. Sophia paced, her hands clenched, trying to rally them. Stay put, this is family business, she'll call it off. But I wouldn't. The heavy pounding at the front door came next, not from her crowd, but with real weight. Police open up, the villa erupted, people grabbed luggage voices, tumbling over each other in panic. I held the phone tighter, the deed folder ready under my arm as the reality set in for them. Sophia moved to the foyer, smoothing her hair, plastering on a composed expression. The sirens faded as the officers arrived, but their echo lingered in my mind, a signal that things were shifting, that my stand was holding. In 2025, at the foyer of my villa in the Hamptons, I was 42 and facing Sophia with the police at the door, my resolve unyielding. The pounding echoed with authority cutting through the frenzy. This wasn't Sophia's entitled knocks anymore. Police opened the door. The villa swirled into greater chaos. Footsteps dashed across the travertine, voices clashing in panic. I held my position in the hallway, phone still in hand, like an anchor, as Sophia hurried to the foyer. She straightened her posture, forcing a warm smile as she pulled the mahogany door wide. Officers, thank goodness, she said, her voice honeyed with feigned relief. My sister's having a moment. We're just here for some family time, and she, man, the older officer, interrupted his tone even and unmoved. He stepped in graying temples, catching the light, followed by a younger woman with keen, alert eyes. Are you the resident who called? I advanced my knees steady now, though a faint tremble lingered. Yes, Emily Collins, this is my home. They entered without permission and refused to leave despite my requests. The older officer nodded. Proof of ownership, I opened the folder I'd prepared, handing over the deed, my grip firm. No more shakes. Sophia let out a light laugh, waving it away. This is just family stuff, officers. She's overreacting. We drove hours and she welcomed us. I never welcomed you. I countered, my voice clear and strong. You demanded. You pushed in. You've wrecked my space. The younger officer surveyed the room, her gaze pausing on the scattered beer cans, piled luggage, and muddy trails across the travertine. Her expression hardened. The older one turned to me. Do you want these people removed? Yes, I stated plainly, all of them. Murmurs of shock rippled through the group. Sophia's smile cracked. Emmy, stop this, she whispered fiercely. Think about it, we're family. Family doesn't invade like this, I replied coolly. The officer addressed Sophia and her crowd. You have 15 minutes to collect your items and exit. Stay longer and it's trespassing charges. Protests erupted. Some of Sophia's friends muttered curses as they crammed belongings back into bags. Others glared at me like I was the wrongdoer. Sophia stood rigid, fists tight her face, a thin veil over rage. You'll regret this. She leaned in to murmur close enough for her perfume to sting my nose. You think you've won, but it's not done. I didn't recoil. For the first time in years, I felt unbreakable, standing taller than her. As the last stragglers gathered under the officer's watchful eyes, quiet began to reclaim my villa. My villa. And as the door shut behind them, I let myself exhale fully. In 2025, on the balcony of my villa in the Hamptons, I was 42 and drawing in the first full breath of the day as silence returned. When the door finally closed behind the last of them, the quiet hit like a wave. No more echoing laughs off the walls. No more beer cans clinking or careless steps tracking dirt across my floors. Just the gentle rhythm of the Atlantic outside and the soft whir of the air system. I leaned against the foyer wall, letting out a deep sigh that felt like releasing a lifetime of held tension. My hands still carried a faint tremble, not from fear this time, but from the sheer release of it all. The police had handled it cleanly. Sophia and her group were gone. I wandered the villa slowly, like assessing a scene after a storm. Beer bottles dotted the court's counters, towels lay crumpled on the travertine, smudges marred the glass doors to the balcony. In my bedroom, the bedspread bore wrinkles from Sophia's suitcase. A stray pair of shoes, not mine, sat by the window. I scooped them up and tossed them out the door. As I smoothed the blankets, the Atlantic caught my eye through the balcony doors. The sun was lowering, tinting the water in hues of orange and pink. For a moment, I stood still, chest rising and falling with a blend of weariness and calm. They were out. Sophia's words lingered, though. You'll regret this. You'll lose us. You'll be alone in this big, empty house. They pressed on familiar aches, but a clearer thought followed. I'd rather solitude than exploitation. I poured a glass of wine and carried it to the balcony. The salty breeze brushed my skin cool and gentle. I sank into a chair, the weight easing from my shoulders at last. For years, I'd been the yes sister, the one who gave in, the one who buried anger for harmony. Today, I'd said no, and the world hadn't ended. My phone buzzed on the table screen lighting with missed calls and texts from Sophia. I flipped it face down without a glance. Tonight wasn't hers. Tonight was mine. I lifted the glass toward the ocean, the horizon glowing gold, as if the sky itself joined the toast. To calm, to liberty, to finally setting limits, Sophia would fume. She'd spin the tale, label me selfish, perhaps rally the family against me. I knew that. But I also knew I had the truth, the deed, the law, and most of all, my reclaimed voice. This villa wasn't merely walls and views. It was proof I'd earned my space, my serenity, my lines in the sand. And no one sister or otherwise would cross them again. As the sun's final rays dipped below the horizon, a feeling I hadn't known in years washed over me, hope. With the horizon fading to twilight, I sat there, wine in hand, embracing the quiet I'd fought for. It wasn't about winning against Sophia. It was about honoring the life I'd built through years of quiet choices. Boundaries aren't always loud. Sometimes they're the calm after the storm. Have you ever had to draw a line with family to protect your peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handled it. If this story resonated, hit that subscribe button for more tales of standing strong.